I've been at BSG all of two months now. I joined from Synthesis. I was there for about 11 years. I was the director of the cloud and MSP business. And I've joined BSG to help them scale their engineering capability. And this is part of why we're hosting these types of events, is just to build a bit of that brand around BSG and engagement in terms of the engineering community, because it's not really what we're known for. We're mostly known for strategic and business consulting. But we have a well-tenured engineering capability which lends itself to these types of technologies and these types of uses with our enterprise clients. So yeah, again, just to wrap up, thanks again for coming. I'm going to hand over to Harry to just do intros on the panel and kick things off. Thanks.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, Daryl. Can everyone hear me? They're fine. Okay, cool. Awesome. So before we start, I've got a shameless plug for our community up here. So I'll actually quickly spend 5 minutes on this. So we've been around for a long time. So I think CNCJ, we've been around for 7 years. We've always been an end user community for Kubernetes and associated projects. So that's all CNCF related projects. And we started 7 years ago when we didn't have a community back then around Kubernetes. So we were doing Kubernetes on enterprise level, but there were no one that we could reach out to for help. So that's why we decided to start this community, to get like-minded people together, mostly end users in enterprise these days. Startups and SMBs are adopting it as well. So yeah, that's why we started. So please bring your friends along next time. Whoever is interested in Kubernetes, any of the CNCF projects, they don't have to be contributors or developers, etc. As long as they're considered end user, they just want to play around. Yeah, please bring them along. So please join. So this is just some stats about our community. We're 1,221 members strong. We rated quite high. We've done 30 successful events, and these events are a mixture between in-person, hybrid, online, etc. We wanted to do a lot more in-person meetups this year. So we wanted to do maybe once every 2 months, just because during COVID, everything had to go online. And after COVID, it was so difficult to get everyone back to the offices again. But yeah, we see that a lot more these days. So yeah, we'll do a lot more of this type of in-person meeting going forward. So just a quick shout out to our sponsors. We've got Big Brave, BSG, thanks Daryl. Robusta, who actually sponsored some of the swag. JetBrains offers in, they also sponsor swag. AWS used to be our venue sponsor. I say used to be, I think they still are. But we'll reach out to them next time and we'll see if they're still keen on supporting us. But yeah, cool. And then OfferZen has happily agreed to give us some swag. But this is not swag for everyone. There's some sort of a raffle draw. So if you want some OfferZen cool t-shirts, etc., Bilal's wearing one. That's an OfferZen t-shirt. If you want to get a cool t-shirt like that, please scan this QR code and then yeah, enter the raffle, and then they'll send the t-shirts and all the swag straight to you guys. Cool. For the online folks as well, yeah, you can also scan this. All right, cool. Great. So now let's get into the main event of tonight. So we've got two amazing panelists. We've got Jose and Bilal. They both work in the enterprise space. Jose is from Standard Bank, Bilal's from ABSA. The Blue Bank and Red Bank, they're not competitors or anything. Tonight, we're all friends here. It's a close circle, it's a safe circle, so you can say whatever you want. So Jose is the technical lead for the Alchemy team at Standard Bank Global Markets. True story, great. He is a developer, electrical engineer, and a wannabe writer. So I'm sure people want to know, like, how the three combinations actually work together. So please ask him after this talk. Yeah, so that's Jose. And then we've got Bilal, who is the engineering manager for the platform engineering team at ABSA. So very, very awesome war story. He's still doing it, actually. So he actually oversees 135 clusters across the entire organization. And that's 135 Kubernetes clusters. I don't know how many of you actually use Kubernetes in production, but one Kubernetes cluster is hard to manage. You manage 135, that's quite hectic. I hope you're not doing it manually. But yeah, we'll get into that just now.
I don't sleep much.
All right, cool. Jose, before we start, Would you like to let everyone know something about yourself?
No.
Okay, cool. Then we move on to Bilal. Okay, and I've got a question for you. It's an icebreaker question. So what is your next favorite project from CNCF besides Kubernetes? Okay, so do an intro and then answer that question.
Okay, yeah. So I am Jose. I actually was looking there like, oh, there's another Jose. And then, oh, that's me. Fuck. So a little like disclaimer, when I do get nervous, and I do get nervous, I start to swear a lot. So if there's swear words, like forgive me, I don't hear them. Like I'll be talking and then or whatever, and then just don't even realize it.
Don't worry, for YouTube, we'll beep you out.
Yes,
Okay, so
we'll do that.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So I am a developer at Standard Bank. We create one of the trading systems for global markets. There's the big French one, which is Murex, and then there's Alchemy, which is the little one. We do very well for the bank. We almost cost nothing. It's pretty much we pay for people to work on this project. A lot of the team has been there for more than 12 years. It's a small team. We've sort of recently started growing. We build everything. Like we have a manifesto, and the manifesto basically says open source for everything. We are not our code. We basically a service. So that kind of gives us some freedom in how we implement things. We're not sort of tied to Java or a specific language. So whatever solves the problem, that's kind of the way we go. There's a few more things in the manifesto, and I can't remember any of them. Change is also one of the things there. Like we always like to change. We like to refactor things, never keep things the same. I think it's what has kept our system going for so long, where a lot of the systems kind of get eaten away by Alchemy. So there were a couple of other trading systems, and Standard Bank likes to consolidate things, and then they go through like phases. But our next mission is to take over the big one, I guess. We have a nice template to look at and something to replicate, so I think it should be possible. Just a little bit about me. So I did start off as an electrical engineer. So I did digital systems. That was building stuff with microcontrollers, PIC microcontrollers, and the Atmel microcontrollers. Then moved into C#, and then eventually ended up in a Java project, which was the Alchemy Risk Engine. It has evolved a hell of a lot in 12, actually it's probably more, probably like 15 years. We started as a monolithic application, being hosted on JBoss. We moved towards containers at some point. We started breaking up the risk engine, changing our models from Java to C++ for performance, again in containers. Then we heard about Kubernetes, and we went for a training thing with Microsoft in Cape Town. We just wanted to go to Cape Town. We did not care about Kubernetes at the time. Someone said it's something that's pretty useful for containers, and we're like, cool, let's tell them, this is recorded, eh? Like, we're like, let's tell them this is offered nowhere else except for Cape Town. So they believed us, and they shipped us off to Cape Town. We had a hell of a good time. We went to one of the things, and the guys were talking about containers and pods, and we were like, what are you talking about? What is this? So then we started looking at YAML files and defining how they get deployed and that sort of thing. And eventually it started to make sense. Then we all kind of clicked and figured out how this could be of use, right? And we actually won the challenge that day. So we had to do it was a performance challenge to see how many requests per second your system could handle before it sort of falls over. And after that, we were completely sold on Kubernetes. We started doing a really funny thing at Standard Bank. So a lot of people used desktops back then. Now it's kind of more laptops, but we started putting little stickers on the power button. So we'd switch it off, put a sticker. And if nobody had changed it, we would absorb that machine and we'd put a cluster on it. So we built our own little cluster with Rancher.
Wow.
Yeah, we acquired the machine. And then every now and then someone would drop it and we'd lose part of our cluster. Then somebody's like typing on their stuff again. So we wanted to sort of stay true to our very low cost thing by acquiring hardware. So we built a Rancher cluster. We started testing out performance with Kubernetes. We deployed all our containers onto that instance. Then Azure came around and asked if we wanted to do stuff on AKS, I think. We went there, Standard Bank announced something on the radio saying we're going AWS, and we were like, that's cool. This was after we did certifications for Azure, the whole team. We're all registering to do these certifications at the same time. We're going to write them at the same time, so we all have to study. Otherwise, you're going to be the stupid one, right? And we all don't want to look stupid. So we studied, we passed, we moved to AWS. So we started deploying it. I think when we first did the talk for you guys, it was 2021, somewhere around there. It was very early stages of deploying to actual cloud. But since then, it's pretty much everything we do is completely on cloud now. So there is no hardware on-prem anymore. It's all on AWS for Alchemy. Obviously, other systems are kind of hybrid. But we've learned a ton. We are not experts, but we're not scared to and experiment, right? So I'm looking at all these people and like, oh my God, they're all devs. They're going to see how dumb I am. So we try a lot of things. We practice, we make screw ups, we learn and kind of move forward. But the system is doing really well. Like we do massive amounts of valuations on our cluster.
Okay.
And it's going well.
Okay. Nice.
Did you ask something else?
I did. I said, what is your next favorite CNCF project besides?
So you said Prometheus, and Prometheus is something we do. We work on a lot.
Cool.
Yeah. So Prometheus with Loki, Grafana, like these are all open source things. And according to our manifesto, it has to be open source. So we get a lot of vendors coming to us trying to sell us tools, and a lot of times we use our manifesto as our go kind of card, right? We're like, no, we have this manifesto. It says no, they're going to be open source, and then that makes them go away. But it serves us well because we don't have to go through procurement. We don't have to try and acquire licenses. It's very easy for us to move from one space to another, deploy locally, that sort of thing. So it has helped with that also.
Yeah, it does. Cool. Thanks, Jose.
Cool, man.
I think one thing I learned from that whole story is that if I want a holiday in Cape Town, I tell my organization about Kubernetes.
So the funny thing is, right after we went to Cape Town, they announced that they're coming to Joburg as well. So yeah, they were onto our tricks. We've never gone anywhere again. That was the last little outing.
Cool. Thanks, Jose. Okay. And we hand it over to Bilal. Would you like to tell the audience a little bit about yourself? And then what is your next favorite CNCF project besides Kubernetes?
Sure, thanks. So yeah, my name is Bilal, engineering manager, as I've mentioned, or rather, you did. So I started off as a software dev at an insurance company about 12 years ago. Found myself in ABSA, started off with platforms on AWS. That didn't really quite work out. And then got relegated into this team that was doing Kubernetes and didn't quite know what Kubernetes was, and very, very green. But we've been able to build up and basically working in that team, we took a platform approach to DevOps to build up a project that we see that ourselves. We also got a similar strategy, open source first. And we built something called Subatomic, which basically took care of deploying your applications into Kubernetes and stratified the whole developer experience, really springboarding them into the Kubernetes ecosystem. Carry on working on a whole bunch of different projects along the way, special migrations and, next to JFrog and all these tools that we love and hate at times. And I find myself in the past 3 years looking after the platform team that looks after, as mentioned, 135 on-prem clusters, busy dropping a data center in Mozambique, where we're dropping a couple of different clusters there. And then we've got about 60 EKS clusters on top of that. So migrating into the cloud as well. Quite a lot of interesting projects along the way and quite a diversified stack, even within Kubernetes. Having a lot of fun. Just because, blue bank, red bank. I managed to go to Amsterdam. about two years ago. But the interesting thing about that is and why I'm so excited to be here is, looking at the Kubernetes community overseas and how they gather together and just seeing the sheer numbers and what it does for that economy as people come through and thinking like, what if that could be South Africa? What if that could be a place in South Africa, in Africa, which is why I'm excited to be here, and I'm really glad to see you guys, and I hope that we can build this community into something like that. Really, really, I hope that someday we'll see that on the continent.
One thing we want to do as a
cycling.
community is we want to actually host a KCD South Africa. So that's a Kubernetes Community Day thing. Yeah. From South Africa, maybe. We'll see. Yeah. But yeah, if our community grow, maybe we should set ourselves a goal. Like if we reach 2,000 people, we'll host like that massive event that every other country does. Yeah. Awesome.
You mentioned what's my favorite.
Yes.
So I'm gonna plug our own one that we've seeded, the KGB. It's a global load balancing solution across different clusters. Basically, that's DNS resolution for load balancing between different clusters. And the amazing thing is the idea was founded in ABSA. They've seeded it as a sandbox project, and it's just been going from strength to strength. And yeah, it's great to every now and then work with the guys who are busy working on that.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, guys, for the short intro. You had to bring up Amsterdam. It's like, okay,
It was like yesterday, it was like, oh, we've got 5 clusters. And then you guys, we've got 100 million or whatever. It's like, we only need 5.
Okay. All right. So let's start with the interrogation. Okay. Gonna stick with Bilal. So what led ABSA to adopt Kubernetes? I don't know if you know the answer, but you can maybe speak from your perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, look, I mean, if you look at our history as ABSA as a bank, right, we come from a bunch of different, the amalgamated banks of South Africa, a lot of legacy systems, a lot of integrating all these different things across. And there was this need to modernize and drive our business forward, become the digital bank that we are. And so all those years back, we decided that, Kubernetes would be a good way to start. Started off as OpenShift, and it just grew from strength to strength. And now we're more Kubernetes. And yeah, it was about unlocking those boundaries between, the infrastructure and development and really springboarding our developers into the clusters and giving them the opportunity to focus on what they do best, right? Yes, they need to know a bit about Kubernetes, but they shouldn't have to wait days or months to be able to get the application from one environment to another. Mm-hmm. And be able to have, with Kubernetes, the construct parity between all their different environments and really deliver value to our customers as quickly as possible.
Yeah. So I think developer experience is like super duper important, because you can't expect everyone to be a Kubernetes engineer and everyone to know Kubernetes in and out. So based on that, Jose, how has Kubernetes changed the way your team has developed applications?
A lot. So I think from the days of like deploying to JBoss, the manual processes using things like Ant and even Jenkins and that sort of thing to get things to production. Already when we started with containerization, it made things a lot simpler already. So it was easy to version things, kill them when they're not working, deploy the next thing. Kubernetes gave it like a home and a way to kind of scale things a lot easier, even the networking around it. Tools like Argo CD and sort of adopting GitOps, that was a game changer for us. So we in Alchemy, we have 2 clusters. We have a prod one and we have like a dev one that has all our dev environments. But from where we were before, where we thought we were hotshots, with our cool little CI/CD pipelines and how things got deployed and stuff like that. But now it's like, even if the pipeline is damaged, we can bring it up again. Like everything lives in Kubernetes. So our processes, we have some infrastructure as code to bring up the cluster, bring up whatever environments we need. And then from there on, it comes with Argo, it comes with, we use GitLab. And as soon as we deploy or as soon as we commit code, it's so easy to move it across environments. It's completely changed the way we deploy. Even the process of going to production before there was a lot of red tape. There was CAB, so change approval stuff, which was really painful. You know, you kind of sit in a room where there's a lot of people that don't really know what's being deployed, but they just know that they need to tick some boxes, right? When things go wrong, they ultimately have to call us to go and fix it. So with adopting Kubernetes and in GitOps, it became a completely automated process. So we log changes based on tickets that are created for tasks, basically, right? We tie that to the commits. The commits then get approved on a remedy. It's called remedy. Everybody else uses remedy. Well, it's like a ticketing system, basically. So it gets approved. The deployment happens on its own. As soon as things pass our pipeline, they're prod ready, basically. And they get deployed. So changes just move really fast.
Yeah.
And we are agile, and it kind of means our sprints are very short now. Like as soon as an item is ready, it moves to production. Yeah, I think like in our team, just another sort of devy thing is all the devs know how to bring up the cluster, know how to destroy it, create a new cluster. Because we do it locally, we do it on EKS, we basically do it all the time. So we are kind of full stack. Someone said something about CSS. Who was I talking to? Who's the CSS guy? Well, anyway, so it's like, I don't do CSS, so I'm not that full stack, right? So from 3/4, yeah, put your hand up. Who was that? Was it you? No, it wasn't you. Anyway, great guy. So yeah, so the team is pretty much full stack. Everybody can do anything. So we do things from analysis to coding to deployment to fixing to breaking. We do everything. The team was very small.
Like, just hire unicorns or something like.
So what's great is everyone in the team has been there for a long time, right?
Okay.
So we got complete sort of like it's our baby.
Right.
Maybe this is a standard bank strategy because we kind of like, we watch that thing. We make sure that overnight it's working. So we even do the support, right? So what goes in, it's something that we're going to support. So we don't move into Kubernetes or into prod. And because of that ownership, everybody wants to know everything about it. So we don't have a UI guy or a backend guy. We all that, right? So tasks kind of move very freely among the devs. So yes, it has changed a lot.
That's awesome. Yeah, because it sounds like a lot of benefits. I mean, if I were to summarize, like scalability, you mentioned automation, CI/CD becomes easier, speed of delivery, you also mentioned you can get things out there quite quickly. Yeah. So for Bilal, a question. So with all of these benefits that you just mentioned, like, are there any other challenges that you have experienced or you've seen your team has? I mean, they should all know about these benefits. Why aren't they adopting Kubernetes? Like, what are the challenges in adoption that you see?
So I think for ABSA, taking this platform approach to running so many different clusters and servicing about 200 different idle services, there's a varied amount of skill in the organization, and there's a natural ebb and flow of people in and out over the years. And that's been one of the things to try and harmonize around, to get more people upskilled, but then take care of like still the experts, the guys who've been there for long enough in the different teams who want to push the edge of what can be done. And so balancing that between and this changes like from year on year. One year your team's going to be great and they've got a whole bunch of people very experienced in trying new things and taking things off the straight off the CNCF and implementing it. And then the next year those people leave due to natural attrition or get promoted in the organization, and you've got new people in the team. And then, catering for both sides of the platform story has been quite a big challenge, and trying to figure out what's that happy medium in between actually empowering people and then also giving them the platform to go on and do what they think they need to do. Because, on a platform, you're trying to cater for the 80-20, and that 20% giving them the wings to be able to move on and do cool new things that we've never even thought of, right? I think that's one of the things. As Jose said, change management is also quite challenging. Change management is made basically about a bunch of people sitting in a room trying to quantify risk that they don't really understand. And when you add that in, you add the Kubernetes story on top of it, like we're unicorns inside the organization, and then unpacking what that actually means to a cab is quite an interesting discussion. But I think we've gained confidence. I think we've stratified the way we do things, and through GitOps and pipelines and all these different things, which has opened up the doors, and we've got a lot more trust in the organization. And that's what we've built through our platform approach to Kubernetes, is the trust that we can deliver quickly, and we can be that driver for change in the organization.
That's awesome. Yeah, I really like that 80-20 rule, right? You kind of like want to abstract the configuration, but not hide it. So the 20% who wants to go in depth and play around with it, they can still have access to that. So you mentioned building a platform, right? Like how does Kubernetes help with scaling workloads efficiently across the organization? We mentioned you manage 135 clusters. Like, how do you guys do that efficiently with a platform? Yeah. Yeah. Please share. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Honest truth, on-prem, if you're looking at your Kubernetes clusters and trying to auto scale, not really bang for buck, right? You've got sunk cost. You've already purchased the kit. It's there. You've got so many nodes. You can only really use it and leverage it for self-healing, right? When you look at the cloud providers and you're using tools like Carpenter, that's where you're really seeing a big advantage. You're able to scale down environments. So that's one of the objectives in this year is, you don't need your non-prod or pre-production environments over the weekend after hours. You can scale them down to have a warm standby, or you can completely get rid of them and spin up through the GitOps story. Kubernetes is very advanced in terms of those toolings that are available. Also, everything's very repeatable, standardized. Your containers are these artifacts that can be deployed anywhere. So you've already got a lot of tools in your belt to be able to handle that auto scaling and really leverage the power of the cloud and maximize your the time of day kind of compute.
Okay, that's awesome. So cost saving just by sort of auto scaling approach strategy, and then also for Jose, actually, do you guys have a multi-cluster or a multi-cloud strategy with managing these Kubernetes clusters?
So the Alchemy team doesn't, but within the bank there are. So there's clusters on-prem, clusters in Azure, and clusters in EKS, where it's kind of they're all sort of talking to each other. Again, like I think the tool that has made all of this very easy to manage is probably Argo. So even for us, like managing the two little clusters that we have, well, they're not little. They're actually quite. There's a lot of nodes. So it's only two clusters, but our prod node has I don't know. It's like probably about 40 or 50 actual nodes on EKS, and that's just to spawn Alchemy compute nodes, right? But managing all of this across different, for us, clusters is pretty simple. The configuration is again codified, and I think a lot of the same pattern has been adopted across other areas within global campus at Bank. So yeah, it's the tools that are available that have made it really simple to manage these things. And I think everybody kind of keeps what's especially for us, what we do is we keep all the tooling basically running in Kubernetes, and that kind of makes it a lot more scalable and just easy to manage.
Yeah, so that's so interesting. So you have like an Argo CD cluster that manages cluster across Azure, AWS.
Well, so no, Argo itself will kind of span across these clusters. So within every cluster, you've got an Argo pod that's essentially running, looking at configuration and changes if it should be synced, should you do sort of like a canary type of deployment or something. So that's pretty much the pattern a lot of the people have, or a lot of the teams have adopted.
Okay. All right. And then to your knowledge, like how does adopting Kubernetes has affected, I suppose, positively your cost in cloud infrastructure? So Bilal mentioned auto scaling is one approach. Do you have anything else to share?
It is goddamn expensive on each.
Just expensive. Okay.
No, so at first when we got the initial, initially we thought, oh, cost will probably go down.
Yeah.
I think overall cost probably has gone down, because if you look at the cost of actually owning a data center, the people that manage it,
Right.
it's not just that hardware. There's humans involved with it, right? I'd say definitely it's easier to manage the costs. It's very transparent. So it's easy for us to see exactly where the costs are going. Whereas when we have our own data center, it's very difficult to sort of allocate costs to certain teams, right? Whereas if you're hosting it on something like EKS or even AKS, it's very easy. And you can even build, you can build in services to scale based on that cost. So for us, we use Go a lot, as well as Java, but so Go does all the weird stuff. So whenever we want to scale or do something like that, we'll sort of turn to Go. So if we want to scale based on our compute usage, we can manage it that way, but we can also manage the cost and then sort of spawn the right type of instances for the request.
Okay.
So having that available is kind of a game changer. So even if it was a little bit more expensive, which I guess it kind of is, the benefit sort of outweighs what that difference is. And we would never go back. Like the benefit of knowing your cost up front versus kind of trying to figure it out and get information from a whole bunch of people, and it's never quite accurate. You don't want to be there. So that's probably been the biggest benefit.
Okay.
It's not really the cost saving, it's just how to manage that cost.
Yeah. For sure. Okay. Cool. So
Just
then
to add to that.
yeah.
So one of the key things I think everyone thinks that you're going to go in and you're going to run this single Kubernetes cluster, and then it's going to be each team has their own one. You can do that, right? And it depends on the kind of value what you're servicing is bringing to the business. But you need to consider multi-tenant environments so that you can scale, and then depending on where you're going with it, think about how you're going to facilitate that from one cluster to another as people grow. I think it's easy to just put a whole bunch of people on a single cluster and then not bear in mind that there will be natural growth with different applications and business units and so on. And yeah, I think that's one of the key things I've learned over the past 8 years of running these clusters and so on.
Okay.
It's also a kind of experience that's available within the team. So there is a platform team within the bank that also manages a bunch of clusters, and they abstract a lot of the deployment like difficulties, even spawning up a cluster or managing it. They literally just want a container, and some config around what is the protocol it's going to use, who's going to talk to what, and they sort of ship that, and then they don't have to worry about anything. Within our team, because we kind of like, we're all very familiar with Kubernetes and our own deployments and how containers talk to each other, it made sense for us to manage our own clusters.
Yeah.
And that happens across some teams, but there is a platform that's available for people that just want to deploy it somewhere. They don't really care about how it's deployed.
And then the group platform engineering team allow you guys to manage your own Kubernetes if you want to. Okay.
So we literally manage entire thing, like the entire stack from database. We even manage the cost. We manage even permissions.
Wow. Okay. And then for you guys, do you guys have a centralized approach, or do you guys have other teams that?
So you've inadvertently chosen very well in your panel because you've got the 80-20.
Okay, right. Yes, yes, you're right. Okay, cool. So I want to shift gear a little bit and talk about a very sensitive topic, security. So this is for Bilal. So what are the top security concerns that ABSA has with Kubernetes?
So your software supply chain is something that often gets overlooked. There's a lot of tools that you need to use, like ABSA, Trivy, SonarQube, all those kind of things before you get into the cluster. That needs to be adequately managed. And taking a platform approach means that you can bake those into your pipelines and get a lot of that standardized across your organization as you grow. Hardening your cluster, as you develop more. Sorry.
Clusters down. Cluster 125 down.
Yeah, so when it comes to the cluster side of things, I think that's having the right scanning tools. Firstly, we look at where you're actually storing your artifacts, scanning there, then translating that into your cluster. Is it hardened? The nice thing about Kubernetes is you can standardize. Yeah, and I think one of the harder aspects of security to manage is what I call the batteries included. So all the standardized stuff that you run in your cluster, it's often overlooked at like what the attack vectors on those are. And we just take it for granted that, all of that is secure. And because it's so well used, I think that there's a lot of space to analyze that and keep that up to date. And yeah.
Okay.
It's a lot to look at.
Yeah, I can imagine. I think it's like super difficult, especially trying to come with a standard approach for your 135 clusters. There's going to be bound to be some bad actors or someone just misconfigure it.
Yeah, managing 200
break things.
200 teams on top of that.
200 teams.
200.
Sure.
So
The hardest to manage is people. I'd rather manage clusters. Sorry. Go ahead.
I was
Yeah.
going to say, so one of the things that we did really early on was that they sent us on a pen test, sort of
Okay.
like a couple of these sort of courses on how to hack things. and that helped us a lot. Like
Okay.
find these little loopholes within our own cluster that actually made us move to Calico because it was just easier to harden it and stuff.
Some of us need help.
Yeah, some of us need help. We needed help. So we changed the networking just from that point of view. Like it was very easy to kind of get into the cluster within the bank, and we thought, okay, well, maybe even from outside the bank. But yeah, managing security around deployed containers for us, it's not too difficult because it's our cluster.
Yeah.
The containers are created by us, so it's easy for us to manage, look for vulnerabilities, keep that sort of thing updated, standardize sort of AMI, the images and things like that. Yeah. I know where I was going with this. I lost my point.
So besides that pen testing course, etc., like do you guys like manage your own compliance then? Like, do you have to adhere to some sort of a governance or compliance from the group, or are you guys
There's a lot of
segmented from the group?
No, there's a lot of, there's a lot of audits that happen and things like privilege account management and that sort of thing. So we get a lot of audits, especially because we're a trading system. There's a lot of eyes on the system. So in terms of compliance, we try to automate a lot of this stuff. So even our deployments and how we log what's going in, how people can kind of see what's going in, which areas of the code is actually going in, and then even afterwards, like what was the impact of it? A lot of that stuff is automated. So everything that we kind of found ourselves doing repeatedly, like after a deployment, like putting things together for prioritization and putting things together for auditors and for compliance people, we've automated a lot of that stuff. There's always something that comes up that we kind of got to dig in and find things. But as much as possible, we try and automate.
Yeah. And these audits, are they Kubernetes specific audits?
It's across
or
the
is it just a
entire stack.
general- Okay.
So there'll be like IT audits, there'll be even audits on the models that we're deploying. So people want to know what changed in the model. I mean, it is so because it's a trading system, we could deploy some silly line of code that makes a trade value erratic or whatever. So even things like that. So auditing on our models, like that's the C++ side. Then we have the Java side and how it calls those models. Then there's the actual security aspects, like are we aligned with what the organization says it should be? So if a trader has actual access to book trades, which portfolios, market data, and that sort of thing, the sort of separation of concerns, we get a lot of audits. And there's a lot of eyes on trading systems. So what we do like to have is reports that are created or dashboards that we'll put on like Grafana or something that's kind of live all the time, so that we never have to go run at things. So
Okay. Okay. All right, that's awesome. And Bilal, having built that awesome subatomic platform to give everyone a Kubernetes cluster, can you share some best practices around securing Kubernetes?
Sorry, repeat that.
So can you share best practices around securing Kubernetes, I suppose, from a workload as well as the infrastructure perspective, like based on your experience? Yeah, do you have any best practices to share?
Yeah, like I've covered a lot of the tools already that you can put into place. I think, as I mentioned, pipelining highly important in that whole story. Standardized pipelining, but also giving people the ability to extend on that and expand it, right? So a lot of the time you think that you understand the space, and we deal with everything from the reward system internally that some people will use to recognize different employees, to your trading systems, and there's a different lens that needs to be applied to both. So I definitely think that, like, when you're looking at your CI/CD tool and building it out, you've got to cater for both sides if you're taking a platform approach. Being rigid enough to enforce things, but also allowing to extend the scope, taking that into the image registry, picking the right kind of tool that is able to tap into the registry and give you reports. And then on your cluster side, I mean, CKS stuff is pretty standard. You basically need to get that into play. I am trying to explore whether we can get AI to kind of hit the reports every now and then. The same kind of thing that you do with the dashboard, where your auditors do want real-time data. The fact that you maybe put it on a conference page doesn't really suit them. So yeah, looking at those automation stories and how you can get those reports and alerts out is quite important. Making your life simple.
Cool, awesome. And Jose, on your side, like, do you guys have any tool and automation that you guys use just to put in place to simplify Kubernetes adoption, or like Bilal mentioned, securing the
So I think, so besides like networking layer type stuff, like we use Calico, but in terms of our own tools, like just to in terms of security, I'm trying to think, do we care? We do care. So what's really nice on our side is we build a lot of the stuff that we deploy. So I'd say, in terms of third-party tools, Argo again. There is another one that manages all our roles, and I cannot remember the name.
okay.
Okay, well, there's a tool that is
security.
deployed. No, it's not. So I'll remember it. I'll get back to it. But there's a tool that manages all the roles, right, across our clusters. So that manages roles to different pods. It manages access to databases. It manages a lot of things. And in terms of security and even auditing that security, it makes it really easy for auditors to go to that single tool that I cannot remember the name.
It's like a policy engine, like
it's managing roles,
Kyberno.
users and roles.
Okay. All right.
So what did you say?
Kyberno or OPA?
Rancher?
No. Something that. Okay, I'll remember it. Don't worry.
Cool.
So it's a single tool that has pretty much everything that's
Right.
required for managing access into our cluster,
Okay.
and the pods, and even within the application itself. Obviously, it's a trading system. People log in, and then there's certain Chinese walls that need to be abided by. Like we've got different areas that shouldn't see each other's portfolios. It will also manage that sort of thing.
Okay.
So keeping it central in terms of access makes it very easy. And I'm just trying to think of other tools that we kind of use besides Argo and this mystical thing that we'll think of.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of third-party things. And again, it's a lot of the stuff that we build and add to, like Grafana dashboards and stuff, just to make things transparent.
So
So I think helping Jose think about this tool has reminded me a lot of a lot of other tools that we should probably consider. I think you got to apply the lens of what you're actually doing with the cluster. So Jose mentioned Calico, right? So the internal networking, whether you have multi-tenant environments or whether you're letting people free reign on their own cluster, your PSP, your isolation of your network from the namespace perspective, or setting up specific routes. Those are some kind of things you need to consider for your security. Qboard and Kyverno, for your admission policies, you can use those. Those things are like in a multi-tenant environment actually are quite important for you to implement. And I think like they're so part of the course with us that often forget that we have these things in place. And then obviously your access management, making it easier, with things like Rancher does stratify that. Exporting your logs to whatever you're logging
Keycloak.
to is.
That's the thing.
yes. Does not start with a T. Doesn't start with a T.
Yeah, doesn't stop.
Yeah, so like I was saying that on the security story, having your logs pushed out to something like Splunk and then watching on the logs, maybe building some custom stuff inside the cluster to look at your events and push those events for privileged access over to whatever alerting system you're using, or leveraging your monitoring stack and observability stack to do the same kind of things. Those are like, they come so far for the course that we often overlook that we have those things.
Should do.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like Keycloak is it's exactly this. There are things that are deployed that you don't ever touch them and you kind of forget they even exist. Like, so Argo is almost one of those things where it kind of just does its thing in the background and you've got to kind of remember that it's doing all these cool things. And even the way we've set it up is that there's a setup for the setup.
Yeah.
So Argo itself can be set up that you have a definition of all the applications that are being deployed. And then you literally have to just monitor, or you monitor the YAML files, but you basically change YAML files in code as well. And then just deployment just sort of happens. So Keycloak is the tool. And it's been around for so long that we kind of we forget it's even there, which is pretty cool.
You can also let Argo CD manage itself.
Yeah,
That's quite cool. So it seems like Kubernetes makes it super easy for you guys to experiment new tools, adopt new tools, right?
So one of the things that Alchemy is sort of known for, and why it actually exists, is so Murex is a good system, right? It's very powerful. Alchemy is a fast system in terms of integration. So whenever there's a new and weird and wonderful model that needs to be implemented, you can go spend hundreds of millions and do it in Murex, and then maybe you trade 2 of these trades across the lifetime, right? So Alchemy is a very high notional, low volume system. So it's trades that are very complex in nature, and you're not going to book like thousands of it. There'll be like 10 of them, but for a large amount of money, right? So we can integrate these things very quickly.
Yeah.
It's easy for us to build a new model, integrate it, and ship it off, versus logging a request with a third party, putting it on their prioritization, waiting months and months before they come back and say, well, what was it you wanted? Like with Alchemy, it's literally 2 weeks to implement a new model. And that's because, in a way, we don't really have to worry about Kubernetes anymore. We've set it up. We do manage it in terms of making sure it's up to date. Any new features, we look at those, see if it will help us in some way, and then we integrate it. But in terms of the models, and that is the Alchemy secret sauce. It's getting these complex models in very quickly.
Yeah. I think speed of delivery is super important for dev teams. If you can not worry about infrastructure, you focus on what you do best, like Bilal mentioned. That's awesome. And then for Bilal, how has Kubernetes changed the developer experience in your organization?
So as I mentioned, speed of delivery has been very important. It's given them the power to really control what goes into the environments and take responsibility at the same time, right? they manage a lot more of the environment. Like I said, giving them sufficient access to their pipelines so that they can alter what their Helm charts look like, what their deployment mechanisms look like, and then take it forward. Yeah, I think it's just that's the key driver, right? It's not having to deal with the complexity of multiple package management on your actual server, which is your containerization, and then having a quick and easy way to get it into a production environment that's repeatable.
Yeah. So you mentioned like 200 teams use your platform to, build out clusters. Like with this Kubernetes approach, right, and speed of delivery. Like, are these development teams? Do they just focus on software and then just do configuration, or do you still see a requirement from them to know a little bit about like pods and a little bit more about services, or do they just build a container, put it onto the platform, and off they go?
So it varies, right? Like I mentioned, you can very easily be a team on the platform that basically just does their code. As you onboard, just put in your repo, and then it will scaffold the repo with all the bits and bobs that you need, and carry on your developer story as just building out and focusing on that, whatever that application needs to do within the framework of your architecture, and having your 3-tier app and following the 12-factor app framework, and you can get very easily on with your life as you start and grow, and then it takes it all the way to the other level where people have far more complex designs, kind of teams that run your kind of infrastructure, where they've got all these little bits and bobs that do different things that they're picking up off the shelf or in off the CNCF, and leveraging all those tools, or even consuming things externally to the cluster, like Kafka or MQ and so on. So you got everything in between, and I think that's like the power of it. Like, you standardize on that infrastructure base to provide it. You give them the tools to be able to have a reliable build pipeline and deployment mechanism into the cluster, and then they are able to do what they need to do. And it really is up to them how complex or simple they need to make it, which is, I think, where you want your teams to be, right? You want them to explore, start off, and then also not overcomplicate their lives. You don't want them to have to fit into a certain mold and only use such specific languages or specific frameworks to deliver, because there's a lot of new things that are coming out in the market, and that's where you're going to get the most benefit.
Yeah. So it seems like a different approach from Jose's team, which everyone is a unicorn, it seems, a full stack team. So how do you guys balance like autonomy for developers versus operational control in your Kubernetes environment? Everyone's full stack. Like, how do you actually need to balance it? Because everyone does everything. So
everyone does everything. It's like I literally got a message now that somebody broke something, but he's the same guy that's going to fix it.
Okay.
So we run multiple risk engines, and sometimes people do a deployment, things go wrong, but it's really easy to recover from these things. Like, you can just roll back, super easy, or test it first, then push it, but the things do go wrong, right? But it's nice knowing that they can manage it. They can carry on and sort it out, unless there's something really, really bad that's broken. But in terms of like autonomy, it's it really is like, we'll have a task. That person does the analysis, speaks to the business, speaks to the traders, figures out what they want, adds whatever he needs to add, deploys that to Kubernetes, and if it does break, they know how to deal with it. So we don't have like one sort of channel for deployments or anything like that. It's the tools that obviously pull the artifacts and actually bring them online. But who gets to do that? It's everybody else that wouldn't be there.
Yeah, kind of like if you build it, you own it, kind of thing.
So I mean, even our approach to new devs, like if we get grads and things like that, we don't let them write tests or documentation. It's literally like, okay, we have this new leg for a swap or something that we want to integrate, bad.
Hmm.
So we chuck them in the deep end, and then if they sort of survive it, and then usually they usually do, and they join our team because they hear about the flexibility or the autonomy that they have within the team, right? And people aren't working on silly things. Everybody can work on anything. And there's sort of an evolution where you'll work on a current framework, something in an existing framework that we've built, to evolving your own frameworks because you sort of see a gap. And that's sort of part of the culture. And Kubernetes and those sort of tools help build that culture, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. So
I
see,
think the other thing that we forget is how easy it is to roll back, right? I mean, the amount of changes that go on very quietly that fail, and the guys just go back to the previous version and carry on. And we're not called in for as the guys who maintain the clusters to even deal with those kind of situations because we don't need to be there. Just a pipeline run back. Done.
awesome. So cognizant of time, we're probably just going to end it off here and open up the floor for questions. Are you guys ready? We're going to ask you lots of questions. Ready? Yeah, it's going to be.
I think you've put us to the
gonna be
space
very
already, so we can do it.
All right, cool.
We're in charge of the raffle. It'll be fine.
No, they're not. All right, cool. So yeah, no. Sorry, the microphone.
Hi, Jose. I have a question. So you mentioned that your team, everyone's full stack or mostly full stack. Does everyone also write tests, or is your team structured so that they are dedicated people for testing?
We used to have testers, and those testers were basically testing what we told them to test, and we found that was very counterproductive. So we write tests. We do test. We have a support team that actually supports the traders. They might assist in testing, like physically testing something, run a report and see what happens. But most of the stuff we put in, there's a formula for the test. There'll be some low-level tests like unit tests to a higher level like integration and regression tests built into the framework and built into the pipeline. And then there's actual, running it on a staging environment. So we've even automated that to compare what it does in staging versus prod. So we write a lot of tests.
I agree. Full stack devs should write their own tests.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a true story. That makes sense.
Are these pipelines all running on Kubernetes or running elsewhere? Yeah, very cool.
So I've got a question for both Jose and Bilal. When you guys moved to Kubernetes, did you encounter any resistance from existing people, like say infrastructure team? You know, when teams used to be dedicated to infrastructure dev and test, how did you manage those conflicts? Like when someone says, "Oh, we don't need to use this. Why must use this?" Or why must a dev do everything full stack and infrastructure? Like, how do you manage those conflicts?
I've got a cool answer.
Okay.
So this is where we stole machines, right? So we needed to prove that this was viable because initially when we kind of like, oh, let's move towards this, people feel threatened, right? Because now this thing is very easy to manage itself, right? It's basically setting up hardware and then you don't touch it for a long time, right? So the way I guess a lot of organizations work is you kind of POC it. So you build it and then you show how viable it is. And then when they see how easy it is to scale and bring things down, it's a lot easier for them to visualize what this can do for them in terms of cost management, even managing teams and that sort of thing. So the idea is to first show them something that they don't even know exists and show them how powerful it is, versus asking for budget for this mystical thing. It's like, it's always easier just to build it. That's kind of the approach we did. And that's why we stole a lot of machines, built a massive cluster on people's desktops and showed how it worked really well on simple standard machines, right? And what we were building at the time, why we needed the scalability, was we were building a CVA, so counterparty valuation adjustment model. And for that, you need to value across thousands of trades in very limited amounts of time. So you need compute and you need it fast, but you don't need it all the time. And Kubernetes was what made the most sense at that time. And yeah, that worked out.
So I'm quite fortunate. I stand on the shoulders of giants And there is a war story that's very similar in the organization to Jose's, where a group of guys got together and took one of their personal gaming machines and set up their first cluster under someone's desk. And basically that was the driving force and the success of that to our CIO at the time, where I kind of joined the team very green, giving us carte blanche. So we were quite lucky that we got a segmented team that owned the full stack in terms of the kit underneath it. We got to choose our own load balancers, our own size and everything. I mean, like the ESXi host, the management plane, everything in between. We dealt with and we built up, and then dropped the clusters and built the tooling around it. So that was probably one of the biggest success stories, is that yes, we did have an OpenShift background that was founded by other people, and there was a lot of success in that deployment. And then we were able to take that and we ran very lean teams. So full stack engineers were basically responsible for the clusters and the back end, the front end, and Kafka and everything else in between that basically deployed your application and allowed you to deliver it. And then we went out to interface with our different teams and started changing our tooling based on our interactions with these different teams, onboarding them. You know, you had your early adopters, getting them on, taking their feedback, and then moving on to your later, the mass migration, where we had a lot of the tooling and a lot of the patterns stratified so that we could handle that, and turning that into that day two support all the way to the late adopters. We still have a lot of people that are not running Kubernetes workloads, and that's okay, right? I mean, there are tools and
Some people just dumb. There's nothing you can do.
there's some software architectures that are better built outside of a cluster, and like just trying to shove everything into a Kubernetes cluster, not the right thing to do. Fervently believe that, you know, understand the architecture, understand the pattern. There's even articles about how people have gone completely the other way and built monolithic applications that outperform your microservices. And so, yeah, it's knowing what's fit for purpose and not trying to force it down your user groups, but rather giving them the options to do whatever they need to do to get the job done. I think that's where you win. You unlock those stories either way, bring the value.
So there are a number of Kubernetes distributions. Which one you prefer and what is the reason for that?
The one I'm running right now.
If you can just explain. the
So
reason for that.
I loved Rancher, like using Rancher. It was, like, it was an open thing, just easy to like join machines to a cluster. Like you could do it at night in a dodgy lighting and stuff, and while you crawling under desks, it was super easy. So Rancher was pretty cool. But where we are now on EKS is pretty powerful. I mean, yeah, they're all pretty much the same.
Yeah, I do think that there's a lot of parity between the two, and there's not much difference I'm seeing on a day-to-day basis. Nothing that's better me. So yeah, we run the EKS clusters. We have our Anki 2 clusters, and haven't really delved into the smaller edge kind of implementations as of yet.
Is Arcade also on AWS? Is
Right.
everything on AWS or do you have on-prem or stuff?
So I think the thing we didn't get to is like, you know, with cloud adoption and the current space that we're in South Africa, is you need to be nimble as an organization about where you're going, and you can very easily invest too much in one cloud provider, and then, you know, rand dollar, whatever external factors are going to make it very hard for you to get off that. And then, you know, your people and retraining, whereas we see the benefit of really stratifying a lot of our application delivery and hosting as Kubernetes as the underlying platform. And then you're able to shift across different cloud providers. And, you know, you don't have that vendor lock-in. So, yeah, I think I kind of got your question, but I took different
Yeah.
direction.
That's cool. I think there was a question.
Last question. Well, I hope I'm the last
there's
question because I'm hungry too. So I'm not from the DevOps background, from the machine learning background, but for the past like year, well, maybe 6 months, I've just been seeing really cool success stories about AI agents running security tests in Kubernetes cluster or like doing diagnostics in Kubernetes clusters. Have you guys like looked into that? Why not?
Because we didn't know about it. So right now.
So I'm in the space where we're really trying to stratify. I've got too many different implementations in terms of dev tools, and managing it at scale is a bit of a burden on the teams. It is one of my key focus areas for and my teams. They actually have a couple of different teams. I run one of 4 different teams in the Kubernetes story and ABSA in terms of a platform. But it is one of the key strategic initiatives for this year is looking at how we can use those AI tools to simplify the lives of our engineers, keep them from the toil and the craft of these simple queries that could be dealt with either directly by the users on our platform, or even as simple as the auditor, when they come in and they ask you and they have no context and you have to explain to them or you have to analyze it. If we had a pre-baked kind of set of tooling that, I want this information, spits out a report, it's current, hand it over to the auditor and just, move past those kind of things. Because those are the mundane, boring things you don't want to deal with on a day-to-day. So let AI and leverage that and get that out of your way so you can focus on the cool stuff.
So if I think of AI, so it's not exactly what you're saying, but I'll say my AI story. So we run our cluster or how Alchemy scales basically like from an engineering perspective, like a closed loop. So doing something like PWM. So we have a metric that we're monitoring, and in this case it's time. We want our reports to finish at a certain time, right? So that drives the scaling and how things scale up or scale down to meet that target essentially. Where we're starting to see potential for AI is looking at logs and looking at a whole bunch of different parameters and seeing how we can scale and improve the runtimes based on a few things and not just say CPU utilization or just time. So we're looking into that, and then AI in terms of the traders is becoming a big thing. It's very sort of cumbersome to book trades, especially structured trades. If you look at a confirmation document and you've got to translate that into a trade, where AI is very good at looking at that sort of stuff, like looking at thousands of confirmation documents, looking at the trades that produced and then using that. In terms of security, we don't care. It's all good. We don't care until we get hacked. No, that's not true. We care.
Cool. Question there?
Thank you very much for the ask. Do you guys run builds on the cluster? And how do you think about spiky workloads in terms of infrastructure?
Yeah, we run builds on. So on our dev cluster is based. So like I said, we don't run anything on-prem. Everything is in the cluster. So our dev cluster runs our staging environment, pre-prod, UAT, all those sort of things. And then we have runners on that cluster as well. So we do monitor utilization and we have alerts even on dev to see if that does spike. And it's very useful. Like it's actually helped us recently to pick up inefficiencies. Like because we run the builds and we run tests within those same runners, we can see these performance spikes in our models. So if there's a model change that sneaks through from the quants, so we've got a quant team that writes a lot of the math stuff. And if they do something that's a little bit wonky, a lot of the times our tests actually pick it up, and then we have utilization spikes in CPU while trying to value the trades, right? So that helps. Yeah. So our monitoring spans from dev all the way to prod.
And how do you guys manage that workload? Is it just through some tooling to scale it down when it's not being used and we scale it up when it's spike?
So we scale the runners depending on how many people are. So again, now we've got a lot more devs and a lot more people are deploying, and there's a lot more pipelines being triggered, right? So there is some scaling with some restrictions, obviously, in terms of how many runners can actually be spawned. But as they are running, we're monitoring that utilization. And then if there are spikes, then we alert on that. So we get alerts all the time.
So yeah, we've got 1, 2, I think there are
5 million.
4. There are 4 different implementations that we're running at the moment in terms of build pipelines. The earliest and interesting one was Jenkins. So every team's got a Jenkins, and give you an indication of how long we always start with this. But a Kubernetes native implementation of Jenkins. And that was quite interesting because we then had a segmented DevOps cluster, and then, you know, invariably the number of workers and Jenkins workers that spins up, and suddenly it's impacting the entire build environment, and then limiting what that kind of impact has across different teams. Then teams going fiddling with their Jenkins and trying to install different add-ons, and, you know, managing that story to eventually the point where you use Crossplane to like ensure that it's exactly what you deployed and there's no deviation. Like the pipeline is where you play the Jenkins instances, how we've been done. So that was interesting, and learning a lot about how to manage that. The Azure DevOps runners, not really an Azure guy, so I know it's there, but those give us a plethora of issues. The Azure team have done very well to stabilize that, but also interesting learnings from there that I unfortunately can't share the details of. And then progressing that into now what we're using is Tecton, and that's more organic and streamlined and faster. So, you know, just building out, that's where we're leaning towards going forward. And then the GitHub action channels that we kind of separate. So there's the platform and what we build, and then the tooling that we use versus and what's lends itself to the GitOps way of managing something at scale like this. And then there's the application teams and what suits their pipelines and what gives them the most efficiencies. And it's been quite interesting journey, balancing the two.
One more question. Jason. Firstly, great talk. It's always interesting to hear how some of these things are being solved within the South African ecosystem. Going cloud native, especially using these vendors, it means now that whether it's clusters, services, or data now lives offshore. It does help that we have data centers popping up within our region, but there's still some businesses that are resistant, or even departments, to having that stuff living offshore. You guys being bank, my question is, did that ever come up as a concern, as an issue that, you know, stuff are now going offshore? And how did you deal with that if it did come up?
That was a fuck up to deal with. So obviously with AWS, the initial instance, I mean, when we started, there was no Cape Town instance. Now I think it was 2 or 3. We had to go to Ireland. And then when we started actually putting live data, then there was a block. It was like, nope, that's offshore. We can't do that. That kind of slowed us down a bit. But because we were very cloud agnostic, we could still run a cluster on-prem, right? That's also served us well. It's like every tool we use is something that can be deployed. We don't rely on any sort of cloud provider specific tech. So even like messaging and that sort of thing, we don't use, like, I think Azure had one we tried, and then we kind of backed off and said, like, let's not do this. So we run, I think it's RabbitMQ internally, just to manage like messages. But in terms of compliance and moving data from Standard Bank's data centers to AWS, there was a lot of concerns, even like encrypting your data, you know, like backups, and that's where is it stored, those sort of things. There was a lot of compliance issues we had to deal with to ensure that if we do get hacked, it's no big deal. So when we do deploy and the data we kind of house, we assume we are being hacked. So we always assume there is somebody looking at it. That's not us. So encryption is a big deal. It's very important, especially data and even feeds and things like that. Everything is encrypted. And even the structure of the database, like if you can make sense of it, you deserve it. You can have it. So everything is very obfuscated. Like it's very difficult to make sense of that data. If you had to steal the database, it's like, cool, it's okay. It's not a big deal. That made people very comfortable. And then we obviously have to prove that. We had to build tools around that to do the encryption and decryption and things between the client, like even the comms between a client on-prem and moving data back and forth between client and server. There's potential for hacking and that sort of thing. So encryption was a big deal, and also like encryption at rest and that sort of thing. That make people happy.
Yeah, so data sovereignty in the financial industry is very well regulated, and we're in a unique position where we obviously expand onto the rest of Africa. So it is a challenge for us what can move in and out of the cloud and what needs to live within our data centers. That story has unlocked a bit in the past 2 years, and so we're seeing that we can move more of our workloads into the cloud. There's also some tooling that runs like in South Africa, or rather applications that run in South Africa that service the rest of Africa as well as the South African market. And so the kind of design patterns that are coming out of these teams, where the processing will happen either in our data center in AWS or in country, and where the data will sit, but it's the same application framework communicating across and using the same kind of tooling. It's just different versions of the app. And there's some interesting things that our teams have done, the downstream teams that are running on our platform. And then, yeah, obviously them having a standardized framework like Kubernetes allows them to leverage that. The other aspect of it is, tooling around your cluster, as you mentioned. So with the advent of more cloud providers that are in South Africa that are available overseas, you're seeing more of a propensity of these different SaaS providers willing to actually drop their SaaS tool in a South African data center. Again, like we're fortunate, so I mean the kind of money we're spending on it justifies it for us. But that also opens up the doors for other businesses in South Africa to leverage off the same technology. So yeah, the landscape is changing, and I think the more competition and the more standardization of what technologies are being brought into South Africa allows that. I think there'll be less of that story as a limitation for your application teams and your enterprises to adopt those kind of technologies. Sure.
So you spoke about encrypting data. Yes, you have to encrypt data. That's assuming it's running over the internet. But you have what the cloud providers call express route or direct connect. One is AWS, one is Azure. So that actually doesn't run over the public internet. So sub, I think it was GN5, that the government notice, General Notice 5, that they legislated needed to have all those provisions in place. So when Time Bank launched, I was there. I was part of the launch, actually part of the sign. That is why I know all this. So his point was correct. 5 years ago, you didn't have data centers here. You have data centers here now. And when you connect from the bank to the data center, you're not running over the public internet. That's PPP, it's private connect. So that answers your question. I think he had a question and we'll come back to it.
Yeah. So unfortunately, we don't have more time. So if you guys have any other question, please approach the panelists after this session and ask them to your heart's concerns. That's cool. So just to close off the session, I would like to thank BSG again for this wonderful venue.
It's amazing. It's like one of the best things that we've had for this pizza. It's awesome. Yes, yes, yeah. We normally just have like 2 pizzas and some beer, and that's it. We call it a day. But yeah, thank you so much, Daryl, for organizing this. Cool. And then, of course, thank you, panelists, Jose, Bilal, for coming to share your experiences with the community. It's very, very valuable. I'm sure you can get bombarded with more questions just now. So you can
Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
All right.
thanks for having us, and thanks to every one of you for pitching up and being part of it.
Not asking evil, difficult questions. Appreciate that.
But yeah, cool. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, there are more drinks and food at the back, so please enjoy yourselves. Cool. Thanks.